All right, so in this final lesson, we are going to start learning about the HTML tags for images, and then we'll start talking about the attribute that we use and what tag we'll put it in so that we can change the background color of our entire web page. So our two learning targets for this particular topic are that we can use HTML tags to add images to our web page, because we all know that images enhance our web page, and then we'll be able to change the background color of a web page. Which means by the end of this particular lesson, you should be able to do these two things in any HTML document. So just a couple of general notes about images. Images, as you've all seen out on the web, make web pages more colorful, more interesting, more eye-catching. Websites with images are much more appealing to go to just because there's something to look at beyond text. So they do add a lot of flavor to websites. Now, while images are great, you want to make sure that every image you are adding has an enhancing purpose to your website. So it's always making your website better. Something to really be careful of is to ensure that your websites do not contain images that are cluttering up the website. Sometimes images can actually be overdone and just add clutter and chaos to a page. So make sure that those images really serve to enhance the web page. Images can also be used as links to other pages, so you can have clickable images rather than just clickable text. And then images can help clarify text or just break the page up into sections. So a lot of times you'll have some words and then you'll have a picture that goes along with it to clarify what that text really means. Or maybe you're just putting pictures in as a break from reading all of the text. You don't want the text to seem so overwhelming, so you have a picture here and there to clear that up. Now we add images into HTML by using what is called the image tag. And something I want you to note here is that this is only one single tag. So unlike paragraphs, headings, things we've seen before, images have one single tag, just like the break tag or the horizontal rule tag. So that one single tag is there, and the reason that is because we don't have text that needs to go onto our image. The image is the image. So we just need to be able to put all of that image information right inside the one singular tag. Now remember, this tag is used to insert a graphics image into the page. Remember, that image is a separate file, and our browser merges the image file with the HTML file. So all this image tag is going to contain is information about the location of the picture and information about how big and small you want the picture to be. And then this last bullet point is probably the most important thing about the image tag, is we give that image tag a bunch of characteristics called attributes. So we're going to give that image the attribute of the location of the picture. We're going to give that image the attribute of its height, of its width. So essentially that image tag may seem really simple, being one single tag, but there will be many attributes inside each image tag. So it actually looks a little bit more complicated once you start coding. Now, this word attribute to some of you may seem brand new, and we've actually talked about this a little bit. We did this when we added a type to our list, so that type attribute was how we gave HTML the instructions of what type of list we wanted to use. Tag attributes are used to enhance HTML tags. So essentially we give it additional characteristics, additional formatting instructions. Essentially, attributes are used to give your tags more detail. So you can see a couple examples down here: setting the height and width of an image, centering your heading, setting the type of an ordered list. While they have defaults, attributes just add more information and allow your browser to display that particular tag with more detail and be more of what you want it to be. So attributes are just serving to enhance your HTML tags that you're entering into your HTML document. So at this point, this would be a good time to pause the video. I'm going to go through these in detail on a couple more slides, but you'll want to fill in these attributes to your attributes handout. So these are the first 4 image attributes that we'll discuss: the alignment, the alternative text, the border, and the height. So I would pause the video, fill that in, And then here again, pause the video, fill these in, and then we'll go through them in a little more detail on the next few pages. So we have H space, source, V space, and width. So pause the video, fill those attributes of information into your notes, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so a couple of things to clarify about all 8 of those attributes that you just wrote down. Now, this first one is called the image source attribute. So this SRC is probably the most important attribute. And I'm going to write that down because if you don't have this attribute, you don't have an image. What this attribute does is it defines the location of the URL of your image file that will be loaded. So if you want an image file to be located, to be displayed, you need to have the source attribute. Without the source attribute, it will just be a blank image on the screen with nothing in it. So this source may just include a file name. It may also include a path name if that image file is not in the same folder as your HTML file. So we'll start off with images that are in the same folder, but in the future and in more complex web pages, you may need to actually include a path name in order to give your browser instructions on how to find the file that you would like displayed. So again, this is the most important attribute. Then that second attribute down there says alt. And what this does is it displays alternate text in place of the image, either while it's loaded or if it cannot be loaded. So this is what happens when you have your browser window and there's supposed to be an image up here, but it doesn't load, and it says something like, if this was McGonagall's flying M and it doesn't work, it would just maybe say flying M. And it's essentially a couple of words or a fragment about what that image should be. So while this isn't a required attribute, it's commonly used in the chance that something doesn't load, so that either you know what image isn't loading as a coder, or the person viewing your web page knows what that picture should be. So they can kind of get a mental image of what that web page would look like if your image did load. All right, so this alignment tag is a very, very popular tag, and it can actually be used for images or for text. So for text, which we'll see, is that we can use left, center, or right. And what this does is it does what you would expect it to do. It's, for example, if we had a web page and we wanted our heading centered, it would go right in the center. Or if we wanted our text justified to the right, it would go to the right. If we wanted our text on the left, it would go to the left. So you can specify if you would like your text aligned center, left, or right. Now, images work a little bit differently, and we're going to dissect this a little bit later. There are actually 5 options for images: bottom, middle, top, left, or right. We're going to focus very, very heavily on left or right because those are the most commonly used ones that allow for word wrap to occur around your image. Those are the 2 we're going to focus on. Now notice there is no center alignment for an image. So there is for a text, but there's not for an image, and we'll discuss why in a later video. So we'll go through, we'll look at why there's no center alignment for an image and how on earth we would get an image to be aligned to the center if we wanted it to be. All right, so that border attribute does really exactly what you'd expect it to do. It defines the width of the border around the image. So every image has a border around it, and what you can do is you can put a number inside of these quotations and you can dictate how many pixels you want that border to be. So if you want it to be thicker, you could do something like 100 pixels. If you want it to be really small, you can do something like 3 pixels. And if you want there to be no border at all, you can always put 0 pixels. All right, so similar to the last slide, height and width do exactly what you'd expect them to do. They define the height and width of the image, and both of these are done in pixels. So there's going to be a number that's implemented in here and in here as well. Remember, height is the vertical measurement, so that's going to be how high the image goes, and width is the horizontal, which deals with the from left to right measurement. So you have the vertical, the horizontal measurements for height and width, and you define those in pixels. And something just as a side note about this is that you can improve the image loading time by including these, because then the browser doesn't need to calculate the height and the width. So instead of just putting the image in there, if you include a height and a width, it will actually load more quickly simply because you've told the browser make the picture this size. All right, so H-space and V-space may not be as straightforward as the previous attributes. These actually define how much space you want around your image, either horizontally or vertically, that separates your image from text. So by default, I'm just going to draw kind of a browser here, and we will go through this a little bit later and actually do examples. So say this part in red is my image. By default, things will kind of butt up right next to your image. That's just the default structure of how HTML really functions. So it'll be really, really close. If for some reason you want there to be more horizontal space, so you want there to be more space right next to your picture horizontally, you could change your H space to be a certain number of pixels so that there was a white space next to your image. That's what H space changes. So you'll notice all of a sudden the words are a little bit further over, and that there is this space right here that you can define in pixels that'll actually move it so that the text won't be so close to the picture horizontally. And then vertical space works in exactly the same way. So I'm going to erase this chunk here and show you, okay, if we had an increased vertical space, and this would apply both bottom and top, where that text would actually get moved up and would get moved down so that there would be this vertical space around your image as well. So that's what H space and V space allow you to do. You can dictate how much space is around your image. And again, we will actually explore this a little bit further when we actually start adding our own images into our documents and want to see what this looks like.